Okay, so Matt has told us there's a potential for severe weather tonight. So give me an idea. What's the window we're looking at?
Probably 8 p.m. until 2 a.m. And obviously that's not the same for everybody. These storms are going to start northwest, move through the area initially as individual storms and then as a squall line, meaning not only do we have a wind threat, but also potentially an isolated tornado threat. The timing, though, tonight we expect to reach its peak somewhere around 10 to 11 o'clock tonight. And it is possible that we have just tornado warnings and no tornado touchdowns. That's what we're hoping for, but we want to make sure you're prepared just in case. You can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/WTVA weather, to find out about shelters in your area. Hey, it's better prepare for too much instead of not enough. Hour by hour, the rain chance and thunderstorm chance increases as we go toward around 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock tonight. We have that 20% on there for 7. I don't think we're going to have probably any storms by that time, but certainly by 11 o'clock, that coverage will increase. So let's talk about the storm threat for tonight, which is going to be out to the west, predominantly starting in Arkansas, in Louisiana, already taking place up in Missouri, and then moving in. Of the threats, tornadoes, winds, and hail, I expect the tornado threat is going to peak right back to the southwest here to the north and west of Jackson. I'm going to put the tornado risk at somewhere between low and moderate. This is somewhat of a classic overnight tornado event like what we typically see here in Mississippi. Not going to have a lot of tornadoes. This is nothing like what happened April last year, but it is possible to have maybe one moderate tornado and a couple of spin-up tornadoes. So keep that in mind. It is late this evening and into tonight. Wind will also be a rather significant factor. A tornado watch box has been issued just within the last few minutes for locations including most of Arkansas. Reason for that, we have a front moving through that's triggered all the wind damage up in Missouri to this point. And then we also have an area of new development. These storms that develop in this area will move into our area, and those are the ones that will have more of the rotation. Eventually, that is going to be overtaken by this squall line back to the west. Once that happens, it becomes primarily a straight line wind event. And if you're choosing one or the other, wind is wind. It can still cause damage, but obviously we would prefer the straight line wind issues. And this will catch up to the initial line, and that is one of the big forecast questions, wind. Because depending on when it catches up to that initial line, it will hopefully eliminate some of that tornado threat. This is one important factor. All the moisture, all the dew points, it has flowed north from the Gulf yesterday. And so compare this 56 for the dew point in Tupelo. That's a decent amount of moisture versus 70 in Shreveport, Louisiana. This is where the richer moisture is, and that will be moved toward us as we go throughout the evening and into the overnight hours. So storms starting to make their way into the western extents of the WTVA viewing area by around 9 to 10 o'clock tonight. Because we still have some of these individual storm cells, you have to think that some will have some rotation. And so it is possible that if this evolves as we're expecting, most of us will get put under a tornado watch later on tonight. Notice, though, how that span of the thunderstorm starts to squeeze in. That's when it becomes more of a line of thunderstorms, and when it becomes linear, that means more of a wind threat. So the farther you live to the east, it's more of a wind threat. If you live out toward Grenada, Greenwood, locations back to the west, it's most definitely a tornado threat for this evening and tonight. And then as we go toward tomorrow, things clear out, and I think the storm's done after 2 a.m. And honestly, tomorrow, pretty nice day, a little breezy though. As we look at that, winds expected to be breezy throughout the day tomorrow. We keep a 20% on for the morning, but as you saw, it's all out of here before you probably wake up. Tomorrow morning, 70s behind this, and then lower 70s for Friday as we head into the weekend. Okay, so we're going to do some forensic meteorology for a second, which basically means we're going to walk back in time a little bit, and we're going to look back. So that was what we were tracking. You know that circulation we've been tracking there? Confirmation now that that was, in fact, a tornado. So we're going to walk back a few scans here on Storm Track Doppler, and I apologize having to do this, but right there, that's where it is. That's our circulation there. Hurricane branch there. I'm going to pop off our radar for just a moment so you can see. So that was when it was crossing Grenada Lake. So now let's track it forward based upon that location at that time to make sure we get the exact location of this potential tornado. And yeah, it's pulling more toward the north and east than necessarily even straight east. So certainly, let's go back to the rainfall mode here so that we can get that for you, because it's a little easier to understand for most folks, is typically what you show you. But right there, that is our circulation. And even though you are not under a tornado warning, if you live in southeast Yalobusha County, you need to be in your tornado safe place. This at this time is tracking in the general direction of Pittsboro and Bruce. Let's track it ahead based on that 45-mile-per-hour wind, forward speed, which is what we've been going with on this thunderstorm to this point. And based on that speed, I'm going to put both Pittsburgh and Bruce in it because it's kind of taking a little more of a northerly jog. So if it were to hold together at that same speed, we'd be talking about Bruce in about 18 minutes. I do not know why Pittsburgh didn't pop up on that track there, but I put it around 15 to 14 minutes or so into the Pittsburgh area. So this is a circulation we need to take very seriously, and it only takes one of these on a night like tonight to be a substantial tornado, and it only takes impacting you for that to happen. Now, this has changed our definition somewhat. This is now number one. Tornado has been spotted on this. That report is now about a little more than 10 minutes old, but we still need to be very aware that this could try to wrap back up and produce a tornado again. Tonight, the likelihood is that these tornadoes will be short-lived, but there's no likelihood necessarily that they will be weak. So keep that in mind. Radar still does indicate that this tornado could still be on the ground.
And it is now time for weather, so let's ask Matt what changes you are talking about for the weekend.
Okay, so 80s today, 80s tomorrow, and then everything flip-flops. Some rain chances, though I don't think that's the headline. I think it's cooler temperatures, breezy conditions for the weekend. And then a hurricane for the East Coast could actually keep us cooler longer. It's interesting how all the different pieces and parts of the forecast fit together. So it's going to be fascinating for a meteorologist over the next week. The impact to you is that we expect it to be quite a bit cooler as we go through the weekend and as we head through next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Low temperatures, coldest of the season, and could be near a first freeze for some locations. Let's look at this air mass, and to do that we have to head to the northwest as a cold front right now is traipsing through locations such as Minneapolis, Omaha, Nebraska, and about to hit Wichita, Kansas with some much cooler temperatures. This is our frontal system that we're watching to arrive as we go throughout the day Friday as all the cold air spilling out of Canada. A lot of 30s behind this, and think about this. These are afternoon temperatures up there in the 30s, so very chilly air arriving Friday. Timing Friday still somewhat suspect. I think some locations 60s for highs on Friday and others 80s. Pretty similar to what's going on right there in Kansas, where this is bringing a 20-degree temperature swing. More on that here in a second, because that's only one piece of the equation. There's not a lot of precipitation with this, so we do expect this to probably come through with only a few showers and not nearly the outbreak of storms that we had last week. This storm system is riding ahead of a stronger upper-level storm system that's going to be really dominant in the extended forecast, because as this moves eastward, it's going to use all these winds out of the northwest behind it and keep pushing in colder air as the initial front arrives. So it cools down when the front gets here, but it might be 2 days later before the coolest temperatures really settle in as this storm system slides toward us. But even that is not all the equation, because down here in the Caribbean Sea and moving through Jamaica today is Sandy. Sandy, a Category 1 hurricane. Now, these do sometimes happen this late in the season, and this hurricane, with winds at 80 miles per hour, is really expected to strengthen over the next couple of days, as the track of it, when you look at the various forecast models, takes it up and near the East Coast, possibly making landfall near New England. Now, what makes this interesting, notice this little change in direction there, that little bump. That's how this kind of impacts our weather forecast, because that West Coast storm system is actually going to do the deflecting, and as it does, the pairing of Sandy and that storm system really going to drag in and keep the cool air in place for the extended forecast. Now, tomorrow, the obvious exception to the rule, because we're still ahead of the front, and with mostly sunny skies, high temperatures likely heading into the 80s. Want to talk rain chances? Those will come as we go throughout the day Friday. Some, as you could see, around the area, back toward Memphis in particular, as we go toward the evening, meaning some Friday night fever games impacted with showers, breezy conditions as this front arrives, so definitely jacket weather for many locations, even if you're warm during the day, and then rain chances as we go toward late Saturday. Cold air behind this storm system, Sandy to the east. Like I said, real interesting for a meteorologist to see just how all this meshes together. For tomorrow, we're going to start in the 50s and in the 80s. Same old that we've had most of this week. Beautiful fall-like weather. Rain chances, we go 30% late Friday. Cooler temperatures for some, still 80s for Golden Triangle. And then everyone drops into the 60s, 50s, and look at those low temperatures flirting with a first freeze by the first part of next week. Yes, we are live up in Boonville for Friday Night Fever, as you could probably hear. Let's get the main player in here.
Isaac, the wind, it's blowing around quite a bit, but you know what? That takes the temperatures in the 90s, makes it a little more bearable. Our game of the week up here in Boonville, we're at Tiger Stadium, and we're out here for Boonville versus Corinth, and that'll be kicking off. We'll talk to Jim Holder here in a few minutes about the game itself. Your temperatures, as we mentioned, are a little warm in the 80s for most spots now, even though we topped out lower 90s for a few of us a little earlier on this afternoon. Latest look at Storm Track Doppler radar. We do have some showers out there, quite a few moving through Monroe County, also northern Lamar County, moving into Marion County, and a few other spotty showers north of Oxford, but more rainfall on the way from the south, moving up from Philadelphia toward Louisville. I expect locations near the Golden Triangle could have a wet game for some spots. A much wider perspective does show that Isaac has continued to weaken, and even though there's been some tornado watch boxes up to the north today, and most of the activity is starting to diminish somewhat. So as far as our forecast is concerned for this evening, we expect a rain chance at around 20 to 30% coverage, and in particular we're looking at locations south of the Golden Triangle to possibly have some rainy games. Okay, coming up here in a few minutes, we'll talk about the forecast. It's Labor Day weekend, right? Everyone wants to know, how will it be? I mean, we've talked about tropical system for a while, and Isaac will still affect the forecast. We'll have the latest details live from Boonville here in just a few minutes. Back to you in the studio.